Greetings from Bali, Indonesia. I deeply and sincerely regret that I can't be there with you all to honor Eric and celebrate his life. Instead, I've prepared this tribute to the man who was my friend, partner, mentor, and inspiration for almost 30 years. Eric and I first met on the set of Lost in America, which, so typically for his work, was not a soundstage, but instead a motorhome, traveling across America with the director Albert Brooks and his co-star Julie Haggerty. It was unlike any of my previous experiences in the film industry, but it became the impetus for something much more unique, something infinitely more creative, something that was to occupy our energies, Eric's and mine, for the balance of our careers. On the occasion of one morning's filming, I was standing on the roof of the motorhome with Eric, someplace in the Midwest, as I recall, when he turned to me and said, "I've had enough, Bruce. No matter how creative and understanding the director or producer, there is never enough time or money to allow me to make the images of the quality that I really want. I've decided that I'm done with features." My partner Chuck Sloan and I have started a new commercial production company. And because we're going to go for the cream of the crop projects, the plums, we're calling it Plum Productions. That was late in 1983. My first call from Plum Productions followed soon after. For the next 2.5 decades, Eric and I worked together with a core family of carefully chosen and gleaned professionals: producer, production manager, first assistant director, key grip, art director, and myself as camera assistant, as we traveled to 29 countries on 5 continents in search of the fulfillment of Eric's vision. Since Eric's passing, much has been written and said of him. He was a very unique man in many ways, and it brings to me great joy to read and hear the accounts from his many friends and associates of his energy, his humor, his unique approach to commercial production, and his ceaseless and uncompromising dedication to excellence in his work. And yet, there was only a handful of people who really understand what it was like to work at his side on those challenging jobs, to follow him wherever and whenever the time and place was right, to produce those images that filled his dreams. "It's like a painting," was the greatest compliment Eric could pay to what he saw through his viewfinder. Achieving that quality, yes, often involved 3 a.m. call times, occasionally 21-hour workdays, physically taxing treks to remote locations, even camping in motorhomes or even tents when no practical accommodation was available nearby. Needless to say, this took an unusually dedicated group of people, bringing together their highly skilled individual talents and singular devotion to the goal of producing Eric's unique vision. I cite one example to illustrate his approach to commercial production. The sunset beauty shot for the end of a particular day of shooting was a scene of a couple on the porch of a farmhouse in South Carolina, watching their young'uns load into and drive away in the product vehicle. As the light began to fade, Eric turned to me and said, "You know that we have to be wheels up." And that refers to a private airplane that had been chartered for the crew. This was not at all unusual. "As soon as possible after we wrap, in order to get to Ocala in time to consult on the dawn shot there, get some rest, and be ready for another early call. So be sure that you've got the working equipment cases open, all unused gear stowed in the truck, and ready to pull the plug and run when wrap is called. The trucks will have to drive all night, and they'll be pushed to be there in time for tomorrow's pre-dawn setup." I let my assistant know the drill, and we were ready. When finally we heard those wonderful words, "It's a wrap," we stripped down the camera gear, stowed the various parts and accessories, unloaded the film magazines, and were gathering our personal gear for the quick trip to the airport when we heard the dreaded, "Hang on, everyone, the light is changing. It's getting even more beautiful." I distinctly remember nearly losing it. It had been, as usual, a very long day already. Forgetting myself and running to Eric to say something to the effect of, "Eric, it's all ready to go. Set up again, shoot again, and wrap the gear again will take us back at least a half an hour from now to pull away. And we're already at the deadline." The moment to follow was one that, from that day on, I never forgot. Eric calmly put his hand on my shoulder, looked me in the eye, and said, "Bruce, there's only one thing that we're all here for, and that is to get the most beautiful image on film that we possibly can. If that means adding an extra day in Florida, so be it. So bust it out, and let's catch this light." The man would do anything, make any sacrifice to capture that light. The result was the witnessing of more spectacular sunrises and sunsets in more remote and exotic places than likely anyone has ever done before or since. We once huddled in a blizzard, protecting the camera while it pointed at an unseen scene, only to have a momentary clearing in the storm and the shafts of golden sunlight appear that could only happen with the Saarinen magic. We would fly into a region or a country, and as we unpacked the gear from flight cases, Eric would take off in a helicopter in search of his ideal locations. On his return, we'd gather around a conference table at a local cafe, or occasionally a space on the floor of his room, and he would point to the X's he'd placed on a map. "Here's where we're going, guys. How do we get there?" We transported ourselves and equipment by helicopter, both civilian and military, airplane, seaplane, snowcat, ski, snowmobile, dog sled, chairlift, gondola, kayak, ferry, yacht, Coast Guard cutter, train, pump car, hot air balloon, on horseback, and far too often on foot, carrying the equipment in backpacks. And yet another quality of the man was that he would never ask his crew to do something he wouldn't do himself. That included stepping out of a helicopter on the top of the Kootenay mountain range of British Columbia in a February Arctic freeze, armed with the admonition of the pilot: "Be sure that every square inch of flesh is covered. I make the combined temperature and wind chill to be about 68 below, and in those conditions, any exposed skin will freeze in a minute." We once went into the base of Iguazu Falls in Brazil with a Hydroflex camera, it and us secured by a 1-inch manila rope, in an attempt to illustrate the cleaning power of a dishwasher. On another occasion, we stood chest high in the raging waters at the top of those same falls, again secured by lifelines, to film a couple in a canoe going over the falls for travelers' insurance. They were snatched out of the craft at the very last second by a hovering helicopter, to which they were attached by harnesses. We swam beneath the pounding rotors of a Coast Guard Apache helicopter, simulating the night rescue of a sailor stranded at sea. Stepped off the skids of a helicopter, hovering at the very edge of the sheer cliffs of the Nepali coast in Kauai. Hauled our gear up the steep stairs to the top of a Mayan pyramid in Tikal, Guatemala, in the pre-dawn dark, accompanied by the eerie and terrifying warning calls of howler monkeys. Squatted in the waist-high grass of the Kenyan savanna, filming lions, protected by a ring of Maasai warriors with 10-foot-long wooden spikes. Eric even launched himself in a tandem parasail, camera in his arms, from the top of the 1,900-foot Sutherland Falls in South Island, New Zealand, to follow the flight of extreme experience enthusiasts for Mountain Dew. That one was a near disaster. It was a magnificent, spectacularly beautiful, thoroughly exhausting, and very fulfilling way of life. And I owe my unique decades-long career experience solely to Eric Saarinen and his singular way of achieving the images that he, all his life, so longed to make. I recently came across this poem that describes our experiences perfectly. Benediction by Edward Abbey. May your trails be crooked, winding, lonesome, dangerous, leading to the most amazing view. May your rivers flow without end, meandering through pastoral valleys, tinkling with bells, past temples and castles and poets' towers, into a dark primeval forest where tigers belch and monkeys howl, through miasma and mysterious swamps and down into a desert of red rock, blue mesas, domes and pinnacles and grottos of endless stone, and down again into a vast, ancient, and unknown chasm, where bars of sunlight blaze on profiled cliffs, where deers walk across the white sand beaches, where storms come and go as lightning clangs upon the high crags, where something strange and more beautiful and more full of wonder than your deepest dreams awaits for you beyond the next turning of the canyon walls. Wherever you are, my friend, may it be for you like a painting.